I just finished interviewing Rusty Brockman. Rusty Brockman is the mayor of New Braunfels, and he has had one of the most adventurous terms as mayor in recent memory. A global pandemic, a spike in population in New Braunfels, and some major changes either already here in New Braunfels or coming to New Braunfels. So stay tuned as we talk about the mayor's time in New Braunfels as mayor, some major changes on the way and what's coming to New Braunfels as well, and growing pains. How are we dealing? How are we managing growing pains in New Braunfels, and where the mayor sees New Braunfels 10 to 20 years from now? Mayor Brockman, thank you so much for taking the time out.
Sure.
Busy schedule. Appreciate it. And we're at one of my favorite places, Landa Park.
Beautiful.
Yours too?
Yes, it is. It's a beautiful place. Yeah, Landa Park is the place that, you can dream about what Prince Carl and all of his followers that came here in 1845 walking from the coast of Texas all the way up to this area. But once they got to this place and found those springs with the cool, clear water, the Native Americans that might have been camped here and making this part of their living style for a period of time during the year, and then being able to look around and see the run of a river that, you get in and you think it's cold, but it's just right. And all of those things make not only an environmentally attractive area so important to our community, but also for the tourists to come here.
Sure.
Because they want to come here for all of those same reasons that you and I as citizens here can enjoy every day of the week. And so I'm glad you chose this place too.
You chose the pavilion to keep us dry, but we need the rain.
Oh yes, you're exactly right. I'm glad it's raining so we can have this talk. But I look over your shoulder and see the golf course, Landa Park Golf Course, and knowing how important that's become to our economy because of the fact that year-round, the winter Texans come and they love to play on our golf course.
Yeah.
Year-round now is year-round, January through December.
There's not a season anymore.
That's right, and it's hard to get a tee time.
Right.
And so that just adds to the amenities of a park that is a gem in at the beginning of the hill country in Texas.
You spoke about the run of the river. Well, you've had quite the run the last 3 years as mayor of this great city of New Braunfels. Quite an adventurous run. We started with the global pandemic. We went right into snowvid, right, with the snowstorm and freeze and shutdown we had, and then the spike in population and the major projects already here or coming to New Braunfels. And we're going to get into all these things in just a moment. But first, how this came about, how this meeting, this was always at the top of my list. And then I'm going to prepare to vote for mayor a couple of weeks ago, right? And the bond proposal. And I see your name is not on the ballot. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? So your term is winding down, right? So why not run again?
Got 2 meetings left. One of them, well, actually 3 as of last night. And we had a great meeting and gave me some time to pause to think about how important all those folks that I've gotten the opportunity to work with have been over the last 36, 38 months. And it's the importance of being a servant leader, the importance of being a volunteer to step out and say, I'm interested in helping take care of my community. How can I do that? And so I was honored to be able to be mayor for the last 3 years. At this particular time, my wife, who is a professional teacher and a wonderful teacher, is retired from NBISD as of last November, and we'll be married 48 years in August. And she's been following me around for 47 and a half years. And so one of the things that's really important to me is the fact that I think I need to give back to her a bit. And the job is not just 2 meetings a month and then you go home and wait for the next one. The job is 6 days a week sometimes. And it requires somebody who is going to not only listen, but be able to lead. And I feel like I've done both of those, not necessarily to the best of my ability for the last 3 years, but I feel like I've done both of those. But I also feel like that I can certainly support the new mayor that's coming on board in a couple of weeks when we swear Neil Leonard's in.
I think I'd want to pick your brain about that because if I'm somebody new coming in, you've been through a lot the last 3 years. So let's talk about Neil Leonard's just elected mayor, and he gets sworn in, I think, at the end of May. Now, does his duties in July or at the end of May? Duties
No, he will take over the meeting on the 22nd of May after the swearing in ceremony takes place. And so he takes that seat in the middle, and I walk out the door and say thank you for this wonderful opportunity that this old man's been given for the last 3 years.
You'll be there for him.
I will be. Okay. Yes, we'll start the meeting. The original 7 who will be there to start the meeting. We have a couple of pieces of business that we will take care of.
Sure.
And then the swearing in ceremony, and then 3 of us will step down, and actually only 2 will take their seats because there is a runoff, and that particular district will take their seat in June.
You'll be there for him as far as if he needs advice somewhere down the road, or if he needs to pick your brain about something as well.
Yes, I'm not leaving and going anywhere.
Okay, so you've been in this community, I think, since 1986?
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
So this is the community that you'll stay in then?
You betcha.
Okay.
To help raise my kiddos.
And your grandkids.
That's right. And now my 5 grandkids.
Okay. And you're going to be, again, the voice of Canyon Cougar football in the fall, correct?
That's what they say. They've offered that to me. So go
for so many years, right?
That's right.
All right.
Had 25 years experience. Not sure I gained much experience, but I certainly watched some great football and young people performing, not just the football team, but the cheer squads, the bands. Every kiddo that comes to take part in those games is extremely important.
You mentioned Neil Leonard's, and can you offer us any insight? Are we going to go backwards? Are we going to go forward? Which direction is he going to take this bus?
It's obviously going to go forward. I think everybody in the community will be able to see, if they haven't already, the kind of leader he already is.
Yeah.
He's a young man who, born and raised here, grew up going through the Canyon schools, became a Texas Aggie and graduated and got his law degree. But one of the things that Neil did when he came back to town after he got his law degree was that he began to get involved in things to make our community better. The Economic Development Corporation through 4B in the city. He has taken leadership roles in that to be able to work for his community, to be able to make it the kind of place that all of us are coming here for. We came here because of its beauty and because of the history and its heritage, but he also is far enough along in his experience and thinking in his young life that he realizes how important this community can be to those kids who are just now graduating this year, and maybe they go off to college and get a degree or get a vocational or technical license. They have a place to come back to and be able to have a good paying job. And so that's all part of that big piece that New Braunfels and the Economic Development Corporation and the Chamber of Commerce and NBU and the county have all worked for and partnered for, is to make jobs that are good for the people who live here, so that when you do graduate from high school, if you decide not to go to college, you've got an opportunity.
Right.
When you do graduate from high school, if you go to college, you can come back here and enjoy the place you grew up in. And he's a believer in that because he's a product of that. And all 3 of my kiddos are products of that. And so
we just want people to stay home.
Right. We want them to come back. If they want to go experience 4 years.
Right. UT, whatever, Houston.
But we want them to come back because they have a lot to offer. And it's not just what they gained as being educated when they left here, but it's that history, that love in their heart for where they grew up that they can continue to share with all the new people that move here on a regular basis.
And we have a lot of great people here. So this is largely why this interview is happening right now, is because we met a few years ago. I was new to the area, and I figured the best way to meet people is to stick a phone in their face and make a video, right? So I met you unbeknownst to me, I didn't know you were running for mayor because you didn't say anything, right? And this was during COVID, and you're with the Noon Lions Club, a nonprofit organization here in New Braunfels, helping the community. And as you do every holiday, you help hang flags or line downtown area in San Antonio Street with American flags. And I remember saying, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And you said, "You didn't know me from Adam." You gave me all the time in the world. But that was during COVID.
Right.
But I remember the first 3 words you said were, "God bless America." Because I asked you about the event. Those were your first 3 words. But you, in that moment, in that time, to me, epitomized one of our big assets, if not our largest asset in New Braunfels, and that's the friendliness and Southern hospitality, if you will, of the people here. So in that moment, I'm thinking, man, I didn't even know this guy was mayor or running for mayor, right? At that time, you were mayor. Didn't know, didn't mention anything. And I said, this is cool. And people are trusting here, people are friendly here. And that's I think it's one of our biggest assets.
I agree with you. I think the community welcomed me and my family when I moved here in 1986, gave me an opportunity as a young principal at a middle school to be able to get involved in the community from a different direction than education.
Right.
They gave all 4 of us at that time a chance to be able to become part of a volunteer group in so many different areas of our community that were significant to people who needed maybe assistance or needed additional people to help them do what they were out there doing.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that you make a point of is that welcoming piece. And I look around this wonderful place we call home and think the history, the care, the love that the community has for those that have been here for many, many years, those that are raising families here, and now those that are continuing to come. A lot of those people that are continuing to come here may have come here for years in summer vacation and enjoyed Schlitterbahn and enjoyed the rivers and just enjoyed New Braunfels in general. But that care and that love that this community has for everyone that comes to the table is very significant, and it makes a difference to I think it makes a difference to those who are coming here, not realizing that's how they're going to be greeted or accepted. And we want to continue that.
That's the fabric. And you coming from, well, let's get right into your beginning of your term because it started right at the onset of COVID. You coming from the coaching, teaching, principal world, how much did that help when, boom, your term started in May, just 2 months after this global pandemic began? And you have a playbook coming into something. You prepare for things. Did you have to go back with your team and say, we need to draw a different place here? I mean, what did you say, geez, what am I getting myself into? Or what happened at that point? Because you're in it right now. You're mayor of New Braunfels, and boom, you get started with a global pandemic.
It happened. Well, and one of the things that I was fortunate is that after the election deadline for people signing up, there were 3 of us that had signed up for 3 different positions, 2 districts, and then the mayor position, and none of us have had opponents. Mm-hmm. So the city council at that time went ahead and canceled the election because it costs money to have an election. And so if you don't have any opponents and only 3 people running, so it made sense to save the city money. Then March came in 2020. That was after the election had been canceled. And because of what was happening with the pandemic, Mayor Castile and the city staff were kind enough to allow me to start getting involved in March.
Okay.
So I had an additional almost 12 weeks by the time I was sworn in May. And that gave me a whole important, wide open look at what I was headed into. They had already done a huge amount of planning. They were working, again, as the partners within the city and the county health nurse, police, fire, school districts, everybody coming to the table and having regular conversations every week on what do we do? Where are we headed? How do we handle all of the things that we think are coming at us? And so to be able to sit in the room and just watch all of that take place was extremely important for me, because you mentioned that playbook. I had some plays that I thought I was going to have to put in place as far as becoming part of a city council in May, but I didn't realize that all of that was going to have to be just put on the back burner, because there were more important things to start looking at and taking care of.
What was the philosophy coming out of that? Obviously, taking care of people, but how do you balance health and safety while trying to preserve or maintain some sliver of normalcy? How did you do that?
Yeah, and again, I wish I could say that we were totally successful at being able to make that, to keep that sliver of normalcy going on. But closing things down was where the state was headed. Being able to realize that business people were going to really be impacted and suffer. Being able to realize that just old Joe citizen was going to be impacted by a pandemic, and not knowing how severe or how impactful it's going to be on lives. The second thing is do we wear masks or do we not wear masks? And do we require people to do that? Those were all decisions that had to be made. Knowing again that some people were not going to be happy with it. Some people were going to be extremely pleased that they were being taken care of based upon science and health care, recommendations. But I think bringing those outfitters and bringing those business people to the table on a regular basis was extremely important. We talked through, where do we go for the summertime? Can we keep the river open? Can we keep the outfitters open? Can we continue to welcome guests to come to town, and where will they stay? If we don't have anybody open, will it be just day in and day out?
Yeah.
And so those were all things that had to come to a large group of people making those decisions. It wasn't government saying this is the way it's going to be, and follow it or not like it, or too bad.
Yeah.
And so having that business community at the table that was, pretty much the umbrella of the chamber, but those outfitters, those restaurateurs, the hotels and motels, and all had representation when we had meetings in some way, and having open communication was extremely important.
So
continue
that's what kind of got us through that period. And then boom, the snow came. And I think we got out of that period relatively quick. I thought the state got on its feet in the city and the county relatively quick for no infrastructure for that weather. And then we move into, everybody's moving to New Braunfels now, because now you can work from home.
Right.
And people didn't necessarily like what was happening in their states. So boom, you got a pandemic, you have snow, and now you have this wave of spike in population. Are you thinking to yourself, what else do you have for me? I mean, seriously, at the end of the day, are you going back and I'm like, hey, what did I get into here? What was the thought then?
No, I was prepared for the growth.
Sure.
More so than I was, obviously, the snowvid and, Winter Storm Uri, and then, of course, the pandemic. But I think, again, it goes back to being able to sit down and talk about what you may have concerns about and what we can do as a city, as a community, to be able to work through and make those things become part of now a new fabric in New Braunfels, Texas. Starting in 1845, I'm sure there were many, many challenges that all of those folks had to come and take on head on. And they were successful in all of those, because otherwise we wouldn't be here 177 years later, sitting on top of a heritage and a culture that was strong and built a foundation. And so I think as you kind of look at history, you don't want to repeat those things that were mistakes, but you certainly want to use history as a building block on where you go from here. And I think the history part about communication, working together, being partners, collaborating on issues that we feel like may cause us to divide, but how do we bring us all back together and continue to work for the good of New Braunfels? And I think those were the ways that we kept the train moving in the right direction. And I'm extremely proud of the way that worked.
I was going to say, how do you grade yourself? You're a former educator. Excuse me if I use that term grade, but how would you say you did during that period?
Well, I think me as an individual, I probably was a good solid B. I strive to be an A. Every time I did something that I thought was important for the community, I hoped for the highest possible grade, but then I wasn't so proud and my ego wasn't in the way so much to realize that there wasn't going to be somebody out there to say, you made an F on that, Brockman. That's okay. What did I do wrong? Don't just tell me I made an F, but how can I get better?
Right.
And so there were some folks that didn't mind telling me.
Good.
And then there were others that said, you just made an F and we could do it much better than you.
There's no solution. There's never a solution to that.
Right.
Yeah, that's never ended.
And so where I came from on all of this is that if it hadn't been the support that I had from my family and my faith in God to build me up every day and to give me the strength to be able to do the job that I volunteered for, I probably would have been an F and still be an F today. But I think that because of my strong faith and because of my wonderful family and my friends and people that worked hard in the city and in the other folks at the dais, elected folks, we could not have been successful in coming out of the pandemic as we have been. We would not have been as successful if it hadn't have been for our MBU family and partners coming out of Winter Storm Uri. And now as we look going forward with new leadership, I think that those new faces mixed with the current faces are standing on a firm foundation of we can move forward, not only based upon what was done over the last 3 years, but also based upon the fact that they are smart people and they have good vision for this wonderful community.
Let's talk about growth because that word comes up a lot.
Oh, yes.
How do we grow while maintaining this Hallmark movie channel feel to New Braunfels and to Green into our area, which makes us so unique, our preservation? How do we do that while maintaining the New Braunfels part of it?
I think the growth that we're seeing now and have seen for the last 10 to 15 years has been that people are coming here for new opportunities. And I think that when people come for new opportunities, they are willing to wrap their arms around where they're coming to and to say, this is now my new home. How can I become part of that fabric that's made this community a community like it is for 177 years? And so I think that is part of the solution to what you're saying on how we make those folks.
Yeah.
A lot of those folks who are coming here too have been here before and already realize how important the heritage and the culture is to New Braunfels. So when you mix those who are coming here that are willing to wrap their arms around their new home, and then those who are sharing it because they moved here like me 10, 20, 30 years ago, and then we mix those two groups who are new with that family that's been here for 5, 6, 7 generations, then we like to hope that that's going to all mesh into what we want to continue to happen, and that's protecting that heritage and culture that we have enjoyed for those many years, and it will continue to grow into those new families that have come here. I think that's the most important part, is sharing and making sure the new people coming here know that this is a progressive place to come and live. There are jobs and there's wealth here and there's opportunity. But again, it would not have happened if it hadn't have been for the forefathers that came here and built that family.
And the people who obviously picked up the baton and over the years.
And continued that.
So with growth in any city, Orlando, New Braunfels, California, wherever, right? You're going to have growing pains. Okay. So I think we pretty much are taking care of one of those growing pains. I mean, we have the Loop 337 and I-35. We added lanes there thanks to the state and the county and so forth, and working together with the city. And then just over the weekend, the voters said yes to the bond proposal, and most of that money is going to roads, improving roads, adding lanes in town. So that's a growing pain that's being fixed or worked on or going to. And Creekside is, thank God, it's easier to get through Creekside now because of what's been added the last 2 or 3 years. But the other part of that is the water. Thank God for the rain, right?
Right.
The stage 3 water restriction that we're still under, and we know that means that we can water our grass by irrigation or sprinkler only once every other week. And that's been happening, or that's been in place since June 2022. People bring it up all the time. The growth obviously is added to this. And it's a hot button topic. I'm sure you already know this with a lot of people. We're going to run out of water. We're going to do this. And a lot, what happens or what's determined, are we going to come out of this stage 3 water restriction, even if we do get that level 640 that we need from the aquifer? Mm-hmm. Is there a thought that, hey, even if we get all this rain, because we're supposed to be coming into an El Nino season, right? Average temperatures, average rainfall, which is good for us after last summer. Even with all that, Mayor, do you see us ever coming out of it? Because we do have a lot of tourists. We do have a lot more people moving here. And we do have endangered species in the aquifer. So is it a thought possibly that, hey, let's just stay at stage 3?
That's a great question, because that was a couple of things that I didn't realize coming in as mayor, that was left up to the mayor to do, and that's declared stages.
Right.
And so a year ago, when that stage was declared, looking at where we were at that point, how low things were, and the predictions were, and they held true, still no rain.
Sure.
And we talk about it a little bit today. Water, NBU has done a terrific job working for and with the city on acquiring new water to be brought into our area. And right now, with the additional water that they worked with GVRA on,
and GVRA is
Guadalupe Blanco River Authority.
Okay.
That brings 9,000 acre feet more to New Braunfels and Comal County than what we had before.
So that's being insourced or outsourced, whatever you want to say. That's being brought in by another source, but we are bringing in more water.
Correct.
Okay.
The NBU has worked on that deal with a project that GBRA is doing to acquire more water east of Seguin, and that project, which NBU and the city of New Braunfels partnered with them on, was the agreement to bring that 9,000 acre feet here. Now, that 9,000 acre feet, with the current growth that we have going on now, will get us out to about 2047.
Okay.
Now, that
for what is that lifting the stage 3? Does that mean we can water our grass by every day?
Everything is the way it is right now.
Okay, right.
Now, and the reason I'm going to step back away from the stage 3 a bit, because in addition to that 9,000 acre feet, NBU has done a terrific job of encouraging conservation on the part of you and I and all the other citizens. Is there a way to change zoning requirements or ordinances within the city to say, let's do more xeriscaping in our developments? Let's do more conservation-minded ways to conserve water by maybe more rocks, maybe more things that don't soak up the water as far as irrigation goes, so that we can serve that water for daily usage, which is extremely important for our communities.
And we're seeing that in some of our new build communities, where obviously it's required now that you can landscape half grass and then the other half has to be mulch, gravel, or rock. So we are seeing that, and people, for the most part, are good with it, especially if we're getting more rain.
Correct.
Right? So I don't know that.
Maybe that stage 3 does become permanent.
Yeah.
You know, if if enough people are headed in the direction of understanding conservation and how important that is, maybe stage 3 becomes the norm. I don't know. Maybe go back to stage 2 and you can water once a week,
right?
Every week. But I think those two things coupled, conservation and then the diligence of NBU and the city of New Braunfels working to look forward to finding more sources of water for the future that will continue extending that out into 2050 and 2060, I think is incumbent upon the leaders in both of those organizations to continue to do. I don't think we are going to see a slowdown in our growth here to the point where we can say, okay, everything we have is just right. And we'll be able to make it. But I do think that knowing that there's so many different developments that are being planned and considered all over Comal County, which is a lot of that is recharge zone. And so even if we have rain, if it's all running off.
We just need it in the recharge zone.
Right.
He's recharging.
Exactly. So we want to make sure that we're doing that in a healthy way in the ETJ and out in the county. And it takes the city, the county, and NBU working together. There's other utilities out there, Canyon Lake Water Supply System, that all of those are folks that come to the table once a month with a city county officials lunch, and they talk about what's going on in those organizations. And I think, again, it's conversation.
Sure.
We've got to continue to communicate and be able to plan forward. And I see great leadership in all of those organizations. And now with Mayor Lennertz and other new leaders coming on board with the city council, I think we're in good shape with that communication continuing.
Let's talk about the growth a little bit. So we're starting to see around town, we have more multifamily units going up. As part of that, realizing that, hey, people want to live in New Braunfels, but maybe they're not ready for a single family home, right? Or maybe they just can't afford to live. They just want to live in New Braunfels. So is that part of meeting families where they're at in their life, part of building and taking on developers who are going to build apartment complexes? So is that part of the vision? Higher density living?
Right. I think that so that we're running out of land. Yeah. And that's the unfortunate part, is especially within the city limits. So if you're building up to a certain level, I think that's important to be planning for the future and be prepared for those who are coming here every day. I think that one of the things that will eventually tell us some interesting future looks will be, are the neighborhoods that are single family homes that are total rental neighborhoods? Is that a direction that some of the new folks coming to town would prefer to go as opposed to living in an apartment complex? But the great part about it is there's options. It's not, we're just going to build one and try to satisfy everybody. There are options throughout the community to be able to give people that thought of being independent. I'm going to move to a new community and I want to have this. Do I have an option here? Yes. Now we're going to have to continue to work on the workforce housing issue. And that workforce housing issue is extremely difficult for many who are not making the wage that they need to make to be able to afford the housing in New Braunfels right now. I can think of our law enforcement officers, our firemen, our teachers, and others. So, and that's a committee that the new mayor, Lennertz, has been serving on, as the Workforce Housing Committee. And that is a group that is going to be extremely impactful over the next 3 to 5 years, is to find a way that we can work again by changing zoning, by changing ordinances, to be able to make it more a neighborhood more usable friendly for those who come to us, by providing a little less on the housing, and building a mother-in-law cottage in the back, or whatever those changes might be that come about. And they're in the discussions now. It's going to be imperative upon us to continue to do that so that we can have those workers that work here live here too.
So to follow up that is we talk about pay scale and income so people can afford if they wish to purchase a house. We have a lot of people who, being a destination tourist place, heavy service area, restaurants and so forth, retail, who work in New Braunfels. We also have a lot of people who commute to their jobs, residents who commute to their jobs near San Antonio or Austin. What's being done right now to try to keep those folks here? What type of industries are we recruiting?
The chamber and the economic development arm of the chamber are working really hard to be able to go out and put our name in front of businesses that are in the technology industry, the cybersecurity industry, a very high paying manufacturing jobs. One of the things that Comal County and New Braunfels have never wanted to do is bring smokestacks and high water users. And so they're going to continue to stay away from that kind of business. But I think the high wage manufacturing jobs, I think the financial industry is another. I think we've outgrown call centers. That may not be something that continues to be seen in New Braunfels.
What about IT? Is IT on the table?
It's
anywhere?
extremely important, and they're working both ends with Austin and San Antonio, not necessarily trying to steal jobs, but maybe you have a big location in Austin or San Antonio, but you need a second or third location. Sure. And we want those kinds of jobs to come here because that's important. And they are good paying jobs. And, when you start thinking about the CGTs of the world that are located here, a Canadian-based company, and Continental, both of those are providing really good paying jobs in clean industry that is a long-term industry too. It's not, we're going to outgrow cars. I don't think we're going to outgrow cars. May not be gas cars. I don't know what it is for the future. But those two industries are huge for us. And that's what the Chamber and the Economic Development team are working on to try to recruit. And they go to shows all around the world, really. Can't forget healthcare.
Sure,
healthcare is extremely important with 3 great hospitals and all of the new specialists that have come to New Braunfels in the form of doctors and others. It's extremely important to be able to continue to push that envelope so that if there are changes in science, if there are changes in how we take care of ourselves, we are keeping up with that tomorrow, not trying to catch up with it 2 years down the road. And so we want to make sure that yesterday is ready for tomorrow with our people. That's one of the goals. And that was really a neat thing that happened by Christus Santa Rosa coming here, and then Resolute and Baptist coming here, and then having the New Braunfels Regional Rehab Facility. The New Braunfels Regional Rehab Facility was one of a kind in between Austin and San Antonio to take care of head trauma, head and neck trauma, strokes. And now we have Christus doing specialty things. We have Resolute doing specialty things. And if I get sick, I can stay right here and my family doesn't have to go stay somewhere in Austin or San Antonio. Extremely important. So healthcare, manufacturing, high-class manufacturing, IT, cybersecurity, all important.
So this is exciting. We have more excitement. We have really 4 major projects going on right now. We have Castell, we have the Rivermill project, we have Mayfair and the old NBU, what will soon be the old NBU building. So where do we stand on each of these right now? We know the Rivermill, we know there's demolition going on, which is sad to see, but it's also exciting because it's going to breathe new life into that area, right?
Exactly.
And Hotel, the original building, Castell, I know that's pushing. Where do we stand on these 4?
Well, I think the Castell is probably the one that has been worked on the longest. There were some drainage issues that were part of the transportation piece of this bond issue. So some of those drainage issues will be addressed with those bond issue dollars. So I think Castell is probably 5 years out.
So Castell is going to be, for people who don't know, eventually going to be I believe, a convention center hotel among other retail, possible office space. But that whole area is going to be, we see the renderings. and it's multi-use.
Right.
And it's just like, when I look at that, I'm thinking, wow, this is, it's just really, but are we going to need a parking structure someday then?
Sure, you bet.
And is that going to happen?
I think eventually that will be the kind of thing that we will see happening. It probably won't be happening in the main downtown area because the things that are going on by the business people who are invested in our downtown don't necessarily show that there needs to be a parking garage in the middle of some of those fun things going on. But that's not to say that what's going to happen with the old NBU building won't have a parking structure with it. But the South Castell project is going to connect everything that's the core around the plaza all the way out almost to 35. But it's that primarily that piece from the railroad tracks into Call Street that will be completely reformed and redone into plaza areas for people to gather on July 4th or whatever it might be. You brought up the mill. You know, the mill has got a terrific history, and the history is not going to go away. The old buildings that weren't necessarily part of the original history are going away. But that one piece that sits right on the river is that 1923, 1930 piece that was built that is so important. And that developer has made a commitment to the community that he's going to preserve that. And that's extremely important. There's going to be mixed use out there that will be so exciting and bring life, like you said so well, life to a neighborhood and a community that has maybe not had that for at least 20 years.
Yeah, decades. So
yes,
it's kind of a sleepy area right now, but just to see the demolition, I know it's sad for a lot of people. My wife grew up here, so she tells me stories that, a lot of people, that's where they worked. And so Mayfair, where are we at in Mayfair, which is kind of like looking in the mirror with Veramindy, because it's going to be similar, right? It's going to be 6,000 residential units. It's going to be parks. It's going to be schools. It's going to be retail. Where do we stand there? Because I know the market is the market right now. And some of those usage fees that we got over the hump with that, hey, if you're going to develop in this town, you got to contribute.
Right.
We can't carry all the time. Our taxpayers can't carry all the time. So the city said, hey, look, you got to pony up a little bit more. Okay, so where do we stand with Mayfair? Because that's a huge development.
Right now, at this time, they're continuing to proceed with all of their infrastructure development. I know they've worked with Comal Independent School District for sites for new schools, and Comal ISD was fortunate enough to pass 2 of their 3 bond issue proposals, and so that includes new buildings, and that may even include one of those new elementary schools out there. And so Mayfair is several years behind where Veramindy is, obviously. But if it hadn't been for the city and the Veramindy folks working so diligently on a great economic development plan to be able to put that kind of size development together, they would not be on the ground doing what they're doing today. They would have had to have actually started over. And so I think Mayfair is going to continue to move forward with what their plans are. Maybe not as fast based upon the recession and the market today, but it will be there, and it will be the quality of development that New Braunfels and our citizens will be very proud of. I think that the other one you mentioned was we mentioned NBU
building
and
Castell.
And the other one that's just come up that puts a whole new look at that area around NBU and the river is the ADM, the Dittlinger Mill, and the flour mill that's closed. And so they have moved completely out. Don't know what's in store for that. Look at your crystal ball and wonder who might pick it up. But it has got huge possibilities along that side of the Comal River, above the tube chute, and even down into the neighborhood there a bit. So that will be something that we'll all be keeping our eyes open for.
We've got a lot going on here.
We do.
So can you give us any insight as to what may be coming down the road? I mean, if you can't tell us, that's fine, but maybe any hints about what may be headed our way, like coming to New Braunfels, aside from the things we mentioned. We know we have P.F. Chang's that just opened up. We have the Pick and Pack going up on 1101. We have schools going up, one elementary school maybe every other year in New Braunfels.
Right.
So is there anything that you can tell us that may be coming outside of those things?
Well, I guess I can say, to just kind of dangle the curiosity carrot, would be that we need to keep our eyes on Creekside to see what might be happening there over the next 3 years.
Soames Landing as well.
Psalms Landing is part of that. The proposition for transportation included continuing Alligator Creek's trails in from 35 into Creekside and then down 1101. So I think if there was one spot in town that might pique the most interest and keep people on the edge of their seat, would be the Creekside development, and see what might be coming there. And as you look at what's happening there, it's just a quarter, half a mile up the road to Mayfair, and what's going to be happening in that direction. So I think that's probably a focal point for all of us to be looking at for the future.
So people want to know, are we going to get a Trader Joe's? Are we going to get a Top Golf? Are we going to get a Whole Foods? Do you know anything about this?
I don't know anything about that, but I can say yes to all three of those, because I think eventually New Braunfels is the place, all three of those that you just mentioned exists to be. And I can't leave out Veramendi. Veramendi has done such a terrific job of putting housing on the ground, but then again, knowing exactly what their plans are for retail along 337, for the connectivity to River Road all the way through to 46 and going out 1863, for their plans for this huge community hub within the middle of that community, built around not only housing and a great amenity center, but then when you think about all the miles of trails and all the green space that they committed, it is huge. Yeah. And that is really another gem to our wonderful community.
And one of the parks is actually one of the 3 large regional parks. Each one is going to be larger than Landa Park, if you can imagine that. That's getting started. That's already started.
Right.
And that's going to be open to everybody. So that's exciting. Your time is winding down, as we mentioned. Where would you like to see New Braunfels 10, 20 years from now?
I would like to see us sitting here at this table looking across there, and that train still sitting there, and the traffic driving back and forth, and knowing that the place we call home today on May 9th, 2023, in 2043 is still the same loving, caring place that we know today, that's accepting and still progressing to be what the community at that time wants it to be, but still holding on to our heritage and our culture.
And our hyper-local business community, which I love about downtown and Green, by the way. What do you say to businesses out there who are thinking about, because business and commerce is so important to a thriving city. As you know, you spend so much time with the economic development team with the chamber. What do you tell businesses who want to come here and add jobs, or come here and add new jobs, or just maybe an existing business who just wants to add jobs? What do you tell the business community about New Braunfels?
Gosh, I tell them that the people who live here support our businesses. And so anyone that makes that commitment to our community to come and bring whatever type of business it is, restaurant or hotel or a brand new retail shop, people in New Braunfels shop New Braunfels. And they are dedicated to being a community that understands how important the small business community is to our town. New Braunfels is also the type of community, through the chamber and through other entities, that promotes our businesses outside our neighborhoods, outside New Braunfels. And so if you are interested in opening a business or bringing a second business to New Braunfels, you have so many outlets of people who are local that are going to support you, and then all of those visitors that come here year-round that will come and support you. You can look at Green and see how successful they've been for so long time. You can look at our downtown that has become just a spotlight for all kinds of fun things going on, entertainment, music, makes no difference. And so I would tell somebody considering bringing their business here, if you find the right spot, you're going to be in the right town. And we would certainly love to have you here.
Along those same lines, Mayor, what do you tell somebody who is thinking about moving to New Braunfels? What advice do you give that person?
Okay, that's very interesting. One of the things that I think everybody that is considering coming to New Braunfels needs to know is that you're considering moving to a town that loves its heritage, loves its culture, is very progressive in a healthy way. And when you move here, will embrace you as becoming a new part of this community. But we certainly want you to take part in helping this community stay viable, stay important. And so you will have many opportunities, Mr. and Mrs. New Citizen, to get involved in making a difference in our community, whether it's nonprofits, whether it's through boards and commissions with the city, whether it's through the chamber, makes no difference. And so don't sit at home with your doors closed and your windows shut. When you make New Braunfels your home, you need to be ready to expand, spread your wings, and take part in a community that's exciting.
What are you going to miss about being
gosh.
mayor of New Braunfels? What is it? You're still going to be in the community, but what is the one thing you're going to miss the most?
I think I'm going to miss that relationship that I've been able to be part of with wonderful city staff and other elected officials that sit at that dais. It's meant a lot to me to be able to learn so much from those other people who have sat in those chairs. And so I think that 3 times a month connect of going in and being able to work on an agenda and be able to do what we all feel like is the right thing for our community, that relationship on a regular basis. Even though I may be sitting in the audience at City Hall and be part of it that way, I have really cherished those relationships that I've been able to build on with those folks.
Is that one of the things you're most proud about being mayor of New Braunfels, is the relationships that you've been able to
Yeah, I think so.
you can cultivate?
I think that, and then continuing to be part of the team of the partners that continue to make New Braunfels a place we all want to live, work, play, enjoy our family, and then invite others to come into. And I'm just a small part of that, but I'm so proud of it.
Some would argue that you're a bigger part of that the last 3 years, especially with your roles in leadership. What we all went through. Again, the global pandemic, the snowstorm, the spike in population, the many changes we've seen with that. What advice would you give yourself if you were to go back to your first year as mayor, knowing what you know now? What piece of advice, what would you say to yourself?
Rusty, go back to your Boy Scout days. Be prepared. However, that would have been possible to have prepared prior to March of 2020. I think I think staying the course and continuing to lead in a way that is supportive of the entire community, knowing you can't satisfy everybody,
Right.
but you can be part of the solutions. And so I've learned that it's not my way or the highway kind of leadership. It's let's work at this together. Can we go arm in arm to achieve a goal, to make sure that things are done right for the community, as opposed to one side and another side. That's what I would tell myself, be on the lookout for that and make sure you preserve that communication.
Thank you so much for not only your time here today, but boy, not only the last 3 years as mayor, but going back 18 years with the chamber and going back so many years in education. And since 86, since you moved here. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
And
for the
we'll
time.
see you around town.
You betcha. If we don't, we're not putting up the flags at the same time or something, but I hope so.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me.